My name is Sophie Alcorn. I'm the founder of Alcorn Immigration Law. I am the Dear Sophie in TechCrunch who writes the immigration advice column every week with the help of my amazing team here at Alcorn Immigration Law. We are based in Mountain View, California, and we are so excited to serve startups, founders, investors, multinational technology businesses from all over the world with getting visas and green cards to live and work in the United States. And we've supported thousands of people on their US immigration journeys. And I'm so excited to be here with you all. And just so you know what brought us together, it is really our shared collective mission to support you by overcoming borders and expanding opportunity and connecting the world. So the way we practice law is that we are compassionate. We use cutting edge creative strategies, and we are rigorous and also conservative in our methodologies, so we can provide our clients with a lot of security and peace of mind in knowing that they've exhausted every option to make US immigration a reality. And we are motivated to do this to serve the betterment of humanity. We believe that if we can support just one person to follow their hearts and lead a more fulfilling life, it has a ripple effect out on the world that supports us all. So I'm so delighted to introduce you to my amazing colleagues, my partner, Anita, an amazing attorney who just has such an incredible focus on our clients' well-being and ensuring that all of our clients are served with the utmost attention to detail in all of our procedures so that we can really make sure that everybody is being supported. And Anita has a personal immigration story. Tell us real quick, Anita, where were you born? Where are you from? And how did you get to the United States?
Sure. So I was born in Iraq, moved to the United States with my family under the F4, the notorious F4 visa, immigrant visa category. My dad's brother petitioned for us. It took us several years to come to the US, but we came to the US with our green cards. My green card was pink, funny enough. And years later, we became US citizens. So born in Iraq, proud American, and an even more proud Armenian. Ethnically, I am Armenian.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anita. And next, I would love to introduce you to our H-1B guru, attorney Gilberto Orozco Jr., who is just such an expert in this highly nuanced, constantly changing area of law. And I'm just so delighted to that we can together offer Gilbert's expertise to our clients. And would you share a little bit about your connection to immigration, please, Gilbert?
Of course, I am the son of immigrants. Both of my parents were born in Mexico. So immigration has been very personal to me, especially growing up. I worked alongside my dad and a lot of immigrants as a young teenager, as a gardener. So I witnessed a lot of the struggles that they go through, which motivated me to pursue a career in law and immigration to help others.
Thank you so much, Gilberto. And Nadia Zaidi, who I'm super excited to announce was featured in Forbes as a top startup immigration attorney in the United States. And we're delighted that she recently joined our team. So Nadia, could you tell us a little bit about your connection to immigration?
Yeah, sure. So my parents immigrated to the US before I was born, but I grew up a little bit in the US, a lot in the Middle East, a little bit in Pakistan. So I have always really been interested in immigration and how borders and expanding borders positively impact people's lives. So that is a little bit about my background.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'll just say that my dad was an immigration lawyer and my mom is an immigrant from Germany. And this is a picture of our team, just in case you're already a client or considering it, some faces to the names, although I'm sure you've seen everybody on Zoom. We do a lot of Zoom calls. We try to make ourselves very available from a communication perspective, but most of us are either immigrants or first generation children of immigrants or people married to immigrants. So it's near and dear to all of our hearts. It's very personal, and that is how we build compassion into our law firm. And we've had a lot of success, as you all probably are aware, which may have led you to this webinar. Immigration has, been a little bit under siege over the last 4 years. You may have heard, but it's changing, and we're super excited about that. But what we're all really proud of is that we built and scaled Alcorn immigration law, even in the last 4 years of darkness, with an amazing, amazing success rate, far exceeding national averages in terms of H-1B approvals, and much lower than average requests for evidence that we received. So I'm very, very proud to prove the point as an entrepreneur that compassion leads to winning in the legal sphere, and that this is a good service we can provide you. And we've also been honored to collaborate with many outstanding institutions, been featured in many newspapers. We are proud to represent many technology startups that have stemmed from top global universities and that are funded by major, well-renowned venture capital firms. So here we are. I already see the questions pouring in, so thank you so much. Please feel free to continue to add them, and we will answer as many as we can today. And the first question really is, why are we here? Why are we talking about H-1Bs? Why are you interested in H-1Bs? And these are some of the reasons that people are typically drawn to H-1Bs. And I'll go through these kind of rapid fire, and then for more of the meat and potatoes parts, I'll be asking my illustrious team to chime in with their expertise. So just, do any of these resonate? These are common reasons why people come to us with H-1B help. You're an employer and you have an employee who's a student on a work permit, or you want to hire somebody and you need to find a way to keep them in the United States long-term for several years and actually be able to work for you in America. Even if it's not at your personal or your office address, because it's COVID, you at least want them to have the security to work from home in the United States. And maybe here's another situation. A lot of tech companies have been working with offshore development teams, maybe in Ukraine, maybe in Brazil. You have longstanding, close professional relationships with contractors who you rely on, and you would love to be able to offer them jobs and come to the United States as employees. This could be for your personal situation. Maybe you're looking for jobs in the US. You might be here now, you might be in another country, and you've potentially identified some employers and you're seeking H-1B lottery sponsorship. Another one that might draw you here is that if you have somebody already working for you on a non-immigrant visa, such as folks from Canada, Mexico, Australia, Chile, or Singapore, who have their own special assortment of visas, they might want to get a green card, and an H-1B would be a safer immigration bridge on that pathway. And then another common thing is, oh, well, we've heard about the O1 for extraordinary ability, but we think we don't qualify, and we're just trying to do whatever easy, low-hanging fruit routes there are. So these are some of the most common motivators we see, and there's obviously 1,001 situations and more. But if this is you, we got you covered, and if it's not you, don't worry, we got you covered. But this is the most common things we see. So high level, before we dive into H-1B, just to set the stage, there's visas, green cards, and citizenship in the United States. If you want to become a citizen, you have to have a green card. If you have a visa, you could optionally get a green card. If you want a green card, you don't have to have a visa. So there's a lot of ways around this. That being said, most people come to the US as students, most professionals. They're on F1, they go through this process of getting work permits, OPT, STEM OPT, they're working at a company, and they are hoping and craving for H-1B sponsorship every year before their OPT runs out. And then the hope as well is that the company will sponsor them for a green card, and one day they can become a citizen potentially. So There's many green card pathways. Most of you are familiar with the business routes. And if we have time at the end, we'll briefly touch on options for family and the green card lottery. Okay, so that's the overview. So now into H-1B land. So just remember, this is a temporary non-immigrant status. It's not a green card, but for many people, it is the path to a green card. Okay, so Anita, kick us off. What is an H-1B?
An H-1B is it's a dual intent visa that individuals coming from any country really can benefit from. It requires that you're going to be working in the United States for a specialty occupation. And it requires that the individual, the beneficiary, foreign national, whatever you may want to call them, has at least a bachelor's degree or the same amount of years in work experience and equivalency. It does require that the individual is paid a specific salary, which I'm sure Gilbert will be going into in a little bit, which has been a little bit complicated, but yeah, we are required to advise our employer clients that they have to pay a certain salary in order for this individual to work in the United States on their H-1B.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, and you might be hearing us refer to foreign national or beneficiary. The petitioner is the company, the beneficiary is the human. We need a better word for this, like the human of value. Like it's, foreign national.
Right.
Not that personal. Anyway, those are all the same thing if you hear us use those words. Okay, so Nadia, can you fill us in on how this numbering system works, please?
Yes, so the numbers have been determined by Congress, and there are 65,000 regular H-1Bs and 20,000 advanced degree spots, if you so want to call them. And because the demand is so high every year, there's a lottery.
Okay. So 85,000 new H-1Bs every government fiscal year. Okay.
That's right.
Great. And, we see, especially in Silicon Valley, this plays out, but this is nationwide. Most folks on H-1B tend to be from India. China is also largely represented. Europe has a share as well. But, everybody from the whole world is eligible regardless of country of birth or citizenship. And so, Gilbert, can you tell us a little bit about the nuances of the timing of H-1Bs in this whole lottery system?
Of course. The H-1B registration opens up in March. Last year, it opened up on March 1st, and we anticipate that it will open up on March 1st again this year. It closed on March 20th last year, so we're expecting the same amount of period to submit those registrations, about 2 weeks. And then we hear back from USCIS whether you've been selected or not by the end of March. If you have been selected, you can then file the physical petition beginning April 1st, and we have 90 days until June 30th to submit that physical petition.
Ooh, okay, so if I'm an employer, that means that right now I need to find an attorney, figure out who I'm sponsoring, and get organized to do this electronic lottery in March, right? And hopefully I'll know if my person was selected in April, and if they are, I can file the whole thing before the end of June?
Correct.
Okay. Now, what if not all of the H-1Bs are used up by people by the end of that June window? What would happen next?
It's a great question. Last year was the first time that we saw a second lottery. It opened up in October. So if this year it's not filled up again, we could expect a second lottery in October.
Okay, so there might be a second chance for people. Can you fill us in on this cap gap concept? Who does it apply to?
Cap gap applies to individuals currently in F1 status, whether it be their OPT EAD if they're not STEM eligible, and if they are STEM eligible, then their STEM OPT EAD expires between April 1st and September 30th. As long as we submit the physical petition before the expiration of their EAD, they'll be allowed to remain in the U.S. in valid status with valid employment authorization until September 30th.
So just to give our audience a hypothetical, let's say there's a student and the very end of their STEM OPT is May 15th, 2021, and they cannot renew it at all anymore. and they find out April 1st that they're selected for the lottery, can they still file until the end of June, or when are they supposed to file by?
We would have to file before the expiration of their EAD.
So before May 15th for this person, but then they could keep working until it's approved, or their October 1st start date if it's still pending, right?
Correct.
So that's cap gap. And so if you have any people who are running out of their OPT time, we got to be careful if they're selected. And with that student example, if they're not selected by April 1st and they're still in the US on their 60-day grace period, and there's a second lottery in June, it's too late. They can't get cap gap, but they might be able to start October 1st after a gap. So this is why lawyers are useful. One of many reasons. Okay, cool. Now, still on timing, what is the typical duration for an initial H-1B, and how long can you typically get in H-1B status? Gilbert.
So the initial H-1B will be approved a little bit less than 3 years, just because of dates that go into play with the LCA that we file, etc. But generally, the H-1B is approved in increments of 3 years for a total of 6.
Okay. And then is there a way for people to get H-1B extensions beyond 6 years?
Yes, there is. So one way is if you have a perm that's been pending for more than 365 days, just a really brief description of what perm is. It's one of the steps in the green card process. And you can extend in increments of 3 years beyond those 6 years if you haven't approved that 140.
Okay, great. And that is this AC21 law that we're all benefiting from. Wonderful. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yeah, the timing is different. So if you did H-1Bs in 2019 or before that, it was a completely different system. One of the gifts, I think, of the last administration was supporting small businesses to streamline this H-1B process with the electronic lottery. And so we're going to be sharing a little bit more about that with you now. So, Anita, could you just give us a high-level overview, please, of what this system is about?
Absolutely. So this is now hopefully the second year that USCIS will be utilizing this electronic lottery system. And it essentially makes it more efficient for both USCIS and attorneys, employers, to go through the application process. So previous years, every single a full application had to be filed, H-1B petition rather, had to be filed on behalf of every single person that you're hoping to put in the lottery. If they're selected, then that application or the petition in its entirety will be reviewed. If not selected in the lottery, they will promptly return your entire however 100 many pages package it is, and they'll return it back to you. So to avoid the waste of paper, postage, and just that hassle, what the change is that now it is an electronic registration first. If these individuals are selected, like Gilbert alluded to earlier, if they're selected, then they are given a specific amount of time to then mail in and file that entire petition on behalf of all of these individuals. There's two separate portals, one for employers, one for attorneys, assuming whoever, like for example, with all of our clients, we work together so that our employers can complete their portion of the portal. Each individual has a $10 fee per beneficiary, which is nothing compared to what it is in previous years. But so yeah, that's cool. The first step. Once selected, then you move on to the full petition.
And what I love about this is it distributes the risk of this process that's inherent with the fact that there's a numerical limitation. So small businesses and early stage tech companies and just companies on a budget can mitigate their risk and spread out their costs in line with whether their candidates are actually selected. So you don't have to just buy this really expensive lottery ticket. It's a cheap lottery ticket, and then you invest more if your ticket was pulled, basically.
Correct.
Now, Gilbert went through this a little bit, but Nadia, could you just shed some color on these steps again for us, please?
Yeah, sure. So if the process follows just as it did last year, we have from March 1st to March to complete that initial registration, to submit all of the beneficiaries' names into this electronic system. And then mid-March to late March is when USCIS will go through the lottery and figure out who's selected. And then early April rather, is when we hope to find out. So if an employer is sponsoring an employee, they will hopefully know in early April that their employee was selected. And then they will have 90 days after selection to file the full petition.
Great, great. And that 90 days really does file the date of selection. So as Gilbert mentioned, I don't know if there's going to be a second lottery this year. I was thinking there definitely would be when COVID hit and unemployment was soaring, but there's been a lot of political changes, a lot of economic changes, and I think people are a lot more excited about immigration with the inauguration. So there may be normal demand, it may be low, it may be high, yet, you know, we'll just have to see. But you always get 90 days after selection, whenever the selection happens, to file. And if you're really gung-ho for like a highly critical employee, or they're demanding this as part of their onboarding package and you need to show a strong benefits proposal, you could still have the whole physical H-1B petition already prepared like we did in the olden days in March, so that if they're selected April 1st, you could, you know, mail in the whole thing first and it's ready to go. So sometimes we have folks wanting to do that for various reasons. Okay, now this is something that everybody wants to know, and I'm seeing a lot of questions about this one. And just as a gentle reminder, please, we are going to be monitoring the question and answer panel in Zoom and not the chat window. So please, if you have put questions in the chat window, you can copy and paste them into the question and answer panel, and we will do our best to answer as many as possible. But we still have a lot of ground to cover, and I think this will answer a lot of your questions. Okay, so TechCrunch didn't actually want me to call this pay to play in the headline of my Dear Sophie column. So we're also calling it a more neutral wage-based allocation for the lottery. So let's take a minute and dive into this and what it means. So, okay. So Gilbert, would you please give us a brief overview of, because there's been several rules this fall about the salary level required for H-1Bs, and I think that's a big point of confusion for people out there. Can you just tell us high level what the different rules were and which one this one is in relation to the others?
Of course. So this rule, very high level, is that basically the higher salary that you're earning, according to the prevailing wages, the higher likelihood you have of being selected. The other rules that were put in place previously were for all ages and perm cases, all prevailing wages were increased dramatically for a lot of positions in many work locations. Yeah, like that was no longer in place. So as of right now, the only rule we have to worry about is this one.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And so, okay, so here's something to note. Whatever happens with this, you don't have to pay your candidate the H-1B wage, whatever you select in the H-1B process, until the start date of their H-1B, which would not be until October 1st. So everybody can take that into account for timing. And Gilbert, how is this new proposal supposed to play out in the electronic registration process that is supposedly happening in March? What practically does this look like in March?
So this time, unlike last year, we're going to have to disclose what the proposed salary will be in the registration. Based on what we provide there, then USCIS will see what level this wage falls under. Yep. According to the OES, the Department of Labor's Occupational Employment Statistics. And then they'll assign that wage level there for you and let you know basically their likelihood of being selected.
Yeah. So this website portal should just have one more question with 4 boxes: wage level 4, wage level 3, wage level 2, and wage level 1. And you just check the box. And remember, you can only put in one person, one time in the lottery for your company, or else it'll be disqualified. So the way this is supposedly going to work based on government research is that they suspect, but who knows how this will play out in real life, they suspect that all the people with level 4 will be automatically selected. All the people with level 3 will be automatically selected. All the people with level 1 will be skipped over because there's not enough, and some of the level 2s will be selected. So like guaranteed lottery, not selected. So we think that's how it's going to play out. But Gilbert, do you remember, because we were talking about this, when this rule takes effect? Do you remember the date?
Yes, this rule's set to take effect March 15th, which is about halfway through the registration process.
So we were thinking about the legal analysis, maybe like half the people would be subject to it and half wouldn't be. But then Biden said he would postpone everything by 60 days. So then this wouldn't take effect until next year. But then this is something he likes that was part of his campaign platform. So he agrees with Trump on this. Nadia, Anita, do you have any calming words?
It should be fine.
Hashtag Native American.
This has been the reality of immigration the last 4 years specifically, and even more so the last year actually. There have been so many different changes that we've had to monitor. So it's been never a dull moment. We have to do our best to anticipate what we think actually will happen, while at the same time preparing for no changes to occur at the same time. So
hurry up and wait.
Yeah, it's hurry up and wait. We'll cross that bridge once we get there, and we'll see what happens. Kind of prepare for everything as much as we can, but expect nothing at the same time.
Nadia, do you think this has any practical effect for people right now?
I think that figuring out the wage is kind of important. And I think it affects employers' hiring decisions and employees' job, decisions. So I think it is something that people have to really think about, particularly employers have to figure out whether they're prepared to offer that higher wage and, be active about it.
Yeah, and just a couple of additional thoughts to like mitigate the overhead. If you want to engage with us to put somebody in the lottery, that's a very nominal investment, and we would help you figure out the wage levels so that you can make an educated decision. Also recall that the wage would not take effect until October if they're selected. And sorry for our valued humans receiving H-1Bs who are on this, but from the employer hat perspective, you could put somebody in the lottery and then choose to not follow through with the actual petition if it turns out to be too expensive for some reason down the road. So there is that out.
Right.
Gilbert, any additional thoughts on what this new lottery system would look like?
No, I think we just have to keep on waiting and see what else comes out and update everyone as soon as we have more information.
Yeah, and starting now, engaging with a law firm now is important because, obviously so many people are being affected by these changes. It takes time for us to do that analysis for each individual. And as with everything with immigration over the last year or two, litigation might happen. A judge could chuck this thing in a heartbeat. So we'll see. Should be fine. Okay, so there's a lot more to go through as well. There are so many changing factors in the immigration landscape, and we want to alert you to some of the high-level things that you should also be aware of as we move forward. So, Gilbert, what about working from home, and what are multiple work sites, and what are folks supposed to do in that situation?
So working from home and having multiple work sites is fine. Just let us know so we can include that in the H-1B petition. Okay,
cool. And then if somebody moves their home address, but we included it on an H-1B, does that person have to tell their company to check if we need to do anything on the immigration side?
Because it was listed as a work address, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. And Anita, what is going on for people with master's degrees? How is it different from 5 years ago?
So they
I'm
get,
not, but Anita, you can do it too.
essentially they get 2 bites of the apple.
Perfect.
So with them, if you have a master's degree, you have 2 shots of being selected in the lottery. So first USCIS, or we go through, they will select all of the applicants, every single one. Actually, I'm sorry, they first do a master's lottery. Everybody that has a master's degree, they pick a select number of individuals from that master's. And then everybody that was not selected is then dumped into the rest of the pool, and they get that's when they get their second chance of being selected.
Yeah, and they rejiggered this a couple years ago to do the order so that people with these advanced masters and PhDs from the US would have the highest chances possible. Right. Yeah, okay, great. All right, Nadia, anything to add there?
No.
Okay. Cool. And then Gilbert, we've heard a lot in Q4 with all of this H-1B wage litigation about private wage surveys. Could you give us a little primer on that and what they are and why somebody would want to use one?
Of course. So you still can use a private wage survey. Typically, the wage survey is different from OES, what I mentioned previously. OES is basically the Department of Labor's occupational employment statistics. That's where they get their prevailing wage levels. So the wage levels differ. If you want to use it, it's fine. Let us know. We'll work with you to make sure that the proposed salary falls within an appropriate wage level.
And the immigration nerd in me thinks this is fascinating. The green card perm structure is about protecting American workers, and this H-1B LCA structure is about protecting our valued international humans from like labor discrimination to make sure that they're earning as much as an American. So it's like 2 opposite intention programs. But anyway, there's this minimum wage ability to pay concept in H-1Bs. This is why the salary matters, as well as the geography and the job level and the occupational classification. So sometimes it's like deeply embedded in a company structure to pay lower wages than what the government database says. So that this is when we could use a private wage survey as an additional tool to base the analysis on. Okay, so now some additional tips for how to prepare a strong H-1B. So Nadia, what can you throw into the mix here?
Yeah, sure. So there are a number of things that you can do to prepare a strong H-1B petition, and it's never too soon to start. So you should make sure that you're, as the beneficiary or someone that's being sponsored, you should make sure that if you have a foreign degree, that your transcripts have been evaluated so that we know whether or not you have the equivalent to a US bachelor's degree. If you're the employer, you should make sure that your EIN has been verified already. And these are all things that, you know, we assist our clients with doing when we are preparing even their registration. So the EIN should be verified, and then the occupation code. So that's a little bit what we talked about in terms of the wage, but that occupation code also reveals whether or not that position does indeed require a bachelor's degree, and therefore is what USCIS calls a specialty occupation. So you want to go through that and make sure that your job actually does require a bachelor's degree according to what the Department of Labor says and thinks. And then you have to make sure that your degree is related to the proposed position. And if it's not directly related, is there a creative way to relate it? And again, that's something that we advise on and help employers figure out.
Right, so like the English major who's a genius and also knows how to code, getting hired for a software engineering role, we might have a little more work to do, basically.
Exactly, that's
okay.
Right.
Great, thank you so much for that. And let's pivot now to what practical, concrete steps you can do now to actually start preparing. So, you know, here at Alcorn, we recommend you work with an attorney, and we have different options to facilitate that. Anita, could you give an overview of what these two different options are?
Sure. So again, there's that electronic filing where we can support you, or an attorney will help you or support you in completing that initial electronic registration. You don't necessarily have to, again, prepare the entire application in advance to the electronic filing like in prior years. So doing electronic filing only means more of that nominal fee. If you're selected, then you can cross that bridge once you get there and engage an attorney for the additional work that is required at that point. So from there, you can opt for that. Or some individuals say, you know what, Anita, or you know what, Gilbert, Sophie, Nadia, you know what, Alcorn team or attorney, I would like to have the full petition prepared. The government, you don't know what they're going to do. Maybe they'll change everything. Maybe the whole system will crash, and I should have prepared that full petition ahead of time. So some companies and employers will say, let's put together that full petition just in case. You just being abundantly cautious. Another reason why some people will want to prepare a full petition in advance, even if they're not sure whether or not they're being selected in the lottery, again, goes back to cap gap. If you have a short period of time to file your H-1B application because your OPT or your STEM OPT is expiring, then having that full petition kind of ready and to fire away is the way to go.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Anita. And Nadia, especially for an early stage startup with a candidate who's never tried this before, where everything is new for them, can you give us an overview on what documents that everybody should start gathering just to get ready if they are selected?
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as a company goes, as I mentioned before, the EIN number should be verified, and that's something that's done through the Department of Labor. Company documents, so there's something called ability to pay documents. So, you know, the company is offering a certain wage level to this person. So we should make sure that the company then has the funds to pay the wage level and can prove it if they're asked by USCIS to prove it.
And let me just interject there. Early stage startups want to know how much money they need to do their first H-1B, or if they need employees. And so sometimes people come to me and they say, we only raised $1 million. Do we qualify? Like, yes, it's fine. You have $1 million in the bank. It's okay. It's okay to be pre-revenue. It's okay to just have a minimum viable product. But you have to show that there's some way that you're going to pay this person. So we need all of that evidence to exist before we file the H-1B. So if you're waiting for angel investor or pre-seed or seed funding, we got to get that money in the bank account before we actually file the H-1B. And in terms of magnitude, if you're just hiring one person, I think, and this is not tested and people will disagree, but I think it's safe and good and wise to have at least like the first year's salary for this person in the bank account before you file. And I've heard other attorneys say that they can get away with less, and often it's never requested, but we need everything to be in order in case there's an audit of that. Okay, so Nadia, what else should folks get prepared?
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And so another thing that I'll mention is that sometimes with early stage startups and their first or second hire, the job title could be something like, I don't know, CTO or something that's sort of C-level, but then we have to go back and look at what are these person's actual skills, what is their degree in, what are the actual job duties, and get a little bit more creative sometimes in terms of, well, do we have to call them a CTO? Can we actually call them software engineer, which is what their degree is in, and what their background is in, and what their prevailing wage might match. So things like that, I think just getting that in order. And then of course, you know, marketing materials and making sure there's background information.
About it's a legit company, not just some sham set up for immigration purposes.
Exactly.
Cool. And then for any candidates, just have all of your scans of your entire immigration history organized in like a Box or Google Drive account, so it's easily shareable. Okay. Now, next up, just real quick, if somebody didn't graduate from college, but they worked, we can get an experience evaluation. So it's okay. Okay, next. Gilbert, I'd love for you just to share a few words on this, but I'll premise it with there was an immigration crackdown over the last 4 years. We are hoping things will thaw, but there might be some adjudicators in USCIS with similar standards for the next lottery season. Can you just tell us a little bit about what has happened with these occupations, please?
We've seen a trend with certain occupations being challenged more often than others. And as you can see in the list here, there's quite a few that we've seen come back with RFEs, requests for evidence. So when working with us, if we determine that we have to use one of these classifications, we'll make you aware of the possible red flags that might be raised for USCIS and work with the employer to minimize the risk of an RFE, even if we are using one of these occupations.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. And you know, there's no law that says that you have to use a certain job title. This is a business decision that the company gets to make based on its standard practices and the job duties. So, you know, we will also support you by advising you accordingly. Okay, now this is a weird one. I'm just going to touch on it real quick because it's still COVID and things are still weird and we're still recommending people don't travel unless they absolutely have to. So if somebody's inside the United States and they can maintain their valid status, I think we're all highly recommending to do a change of status inside the US with USCIS. Just don't leave. Stay until October 1st. If you got to travel after that, make sure you can secure a visa interview before you leave. For somebody whose status is going to run out and they have to go, or there's an emergency back home and you have to leave, or you're currently living in another country, you'll have to go through the consular processing route. This means that after the USCIS approval in the States, you would then have to make a visa interview appointment with the State Department. That is still pretty backlogged. And so obviously some people have to go that route. We're hoping it will get a lot better this year. But if you can avoid it, we still recommend avoiding it if you have the choice. All right, so now a super brief overview on one of the words my startup client used last week, like, give us some hacks. Like, okay, but they're legal. We have to make sure they're legal. So here are just some food for thought, hacks and alternatives. So if the lottery doesn't work out for you, you know, rest assured, you're not just putting the whole fate of your entire universe into what all of the various factors that go into our immigration system. You have hope, you have choices. Here are some. Okay, one, there are some H-1Bs that don't have to go through the lottery. We have developed a new exclusive partnership, not exclusive, but very rarely used, but successful partnership with a nonprofit that believes in supporting underserved, diverse United States college students in STEM fields with access to project-based learning to further their education. What this means for you is if your candidate doesn't get selected in the H-1B lottery and they're running out of time because their STEM OPT is done and you need to find a way to keep them here, we can have your company nominate the candidate as a Global Talent Fellow to this nonprofit organization. If they're selected, they will get to lead a project in a class for students for 5 hours a week over Zoom. The students will work on a project that will support your startup. The candidate will get an H-1B without going through the lottery. And as long as they maintain that teaching role, your company can concurrently sponsor a second H-1B without the lottery. It is a beautiful solution. I'm hoping that we can scale it and get big tech companies to adopt it. It's really valuable for everybody involved. And I love that it gives back to the US education system as well. There are many other types of visas. If you want our questionnaire or to explore these, please reach out to us one-on-one. We have this infographic chart that everybody really appreciates, and you'll all be getting it for attending today's webinar. Next, we created a class called Extraordinary Ability Bootcamp so that everybody has the chance to get a visa or green card in the United States without $1 million, marrying an American, or getting a job. And we have a promo code. You can sign up on Teachable and you will have that information as well. And basically it goes through the O1 and EB1 and EB2 NIW requirements for how you can get an extraordinary ability visa or self-petition your own green card without a company. So that has like 15 videos that I recorded this summer and tons of resources. It goes way in depth. And then another option that sometimes people do, like we had this stealth mode startup hire this professional from a top university who had really unique AI experience, and they did like an H-1B in the lottery and an O1 and an EB-1A and an EB-2 NIW all at the same time because they just wanted to go all in with recruiting this talented individual. And just know, many companies have policies for reasons that they're not going to do a green card until somebody gets an H-1B first because they want to see longevity and commitment. There's no legal requirement mandating that. So sometimes different factors can arise in companies, and just know that it is legally possible. There may be some risks regarding travel if the person's on F1 student visa, but it's legally, technically possible to start a green card for somebody before they got an H-1B. And for somebody born, for example, in India with a really long wait time, this could be a very valuable employment benefit for them. Sometimes our companies pay when their employees are in love with US citizens. They are super happy to fund that process for their employee to get a marriage-based green card. It's like a third of the investment and maybe a third, or if you're from India, 1/150th of the time to get a green card as it would be through the employment-based process. So that's a thing that exists. And then also we started a nonprofit. I founded a nonprofit this summer with some international students to bring together tech companies that are open to and welcome diversity and are willing to hire and sponsor international students with international students to connect folks with jobs and get donations, because a lot of international students aren't able to afford legal advice with competent attorneys, and there's a lack of resources within universities for them to get the information they need. So we just got our 501c3 status approved, yay! And we welcome any support, so you can reach out to me if you're interested in being involved in that. And now we have time for some of your amazing questions that I see have been flooding in. And so I would love to remind you that we are here for you and we appreciate you. And even if we cannot answer your question in the next 9 minutes, we are happy to get you the resources that you need. And we welcome you to reach out to us. You can see here, we're on social media. If you want to set up an appointment, you can email hello@alcorn.law. That's, one of the fastest ways. You can also, just check us out, right? We have the podcast, Immigration Law for Tech Startups, that you can subscribe to on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. And you can also catch the weekly Dear Sophie immigration advice column in TechCrunch. So, all right, I'm going to go through some of the questions. Here's one for Gilbert. Is there any advantage or disadvantage in the wage-based lottery proposal for full-time jobs over part-time jobs? Does it matter if it's full-time or part-time, the way we think this new lottery will be set up?
I imagine it would apply the same way. There's still levels for part-time. It's just on an hourly rate instead of an annual salary.
Okay, wonderful. So yeah, we think it should be equally possible. Great. Now here's one for that Nadia could answer. Anything that a startup that wants to do IT H-1Bs, anything for them to know, and if they're doing IT consulting H-1Bs, does that change anything if the folks are off-site at other employers?
Yes, I think that the work site affects the wage, because the wage depends on the location and the title. So if people are contracted off-site to end clients, it would affect the process is the end.
That whole thing, business got the smackdown, but it came back through litigation. So it's sort of possible again, but it's complicated. Here's one. Somebody heard as we were chit-chatting in the beginning that there's this new Biden proposal that's launching today in Congress. It's not a law yet. many miles to go before that happens. But the thing I was mentioning is Biden has been a believer that anybody who gets a PhD in the United States in the STEM field should be able to automatically self-petition a green card with no backlog. So that would be a beautiful thing. It would give our sons and daughters the ability to have an alternative to marriage. It's like, no, honey, you don't have to marry a US citizen. You could just go get a chemistry PhD. So I would love to be able to say that. All right, and some very interesting feedback here. Somebody would like to know if we don't have an H-1B, we can still get perm. Is that true? Do you have to go through perm to get a green card? Anita, could you shed some light on that, please?
It all really depends. In theory, you can file a perm application without being on H-1B, but it can be risky. So if there's anybody with this specific question, I encourage you to reach out to us so that we can schedule a one-on-one consultation so that we can give you options.
Great, thank you so much. And here's another one. How many applications do you expect this year to the H-1B lottery? Anybody have any idea? Last year there were more than 200,000. I don't think anyone.
It's going to be a lot.
It's probably going to be a lot. back in like May when everything was tanking, I was like, oh, maybe 50,000 people will apply. It'll be a throwback to 2008 with the financial crisis, but I don't think that anymore. I think it's going to be more than 200,000. All right. 5 minutes left on the clock. Let's see how many more we can get through. Gilbert, after the first 3 years of H-1B, can the employer file for a green card, or can they wait until the end of 6 years after the second H-1B?
So there is a 6-year limit in H-1B status, right? So ideally, you want to start that green card process before the end of your 5th year. That way you can at least extend in 1-year increments while your perm is being certified.
Right.
But there is no exact timeline for when to start this. Just try to start it before the end of the 5th year.
Great. And then here's one that is kind of very interesting. Maybe Gilbert or Nadia, you would know. Can the employees request employer's proof of electronic registration completion? That takes guts. I mean, you could ask for screenshots or email confirmations. I don't think employers routinely provide this, but you can negotiate it.
Yeah, I think so. I think
be polite.
Yeah, be a good thing.
Okay, cool. Here's another one. I'm a student, I'm on STEM, but I lost my EAD card. Is the physical card required for the H-1B process? Hopefully you got a scan of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right, we won't need the original for the H-1B, just a scanned copy.
Yeah, we just got to make sure it's valid. All right, and then, okay, got time for a few more. Gilbert, what is the wage level based on?
So it's based on the position that's being offered and the work location.
Okay, great. And I think we're just going to provide this to everybody, the FLC wage search wizard. Somebody wants to know where can you try to look up your own wages. So we'll make sure that Edith has that link so that everybody can get it. And you can try to DIY it. And if you have any questions, you can hire us and we'll be more than happy to just calculate it for you. All right, let's see. So many questions. All right. What about somebody who's on a cap exempt H-1B? Should they still go through the lottery? Gilbert, can you take that one?
I would recommend trying to submit a registration, even if you already are on cap exempt. This will allow you down the road, if you ever decide to leave the cap exempt employer, to not have to go to the lottery again.
Yeah.
Because if you ever do leave and you're still under a cap exempt H-1B, you'll have to go to the lottery.
Yeah. We got another question about this wage-based selection process. So just to clarify, it is a final rule. It did take effect. It's happening. It's supposed to start on some date in early March, but it could be postponed by 60 days by Biden. It could be stopped entirely by a judge. or it could just happen. Or they could change the window of the electronic registration to be after the start date of this new rule so that actually everybody is in the same category. So we don't know, but it doesn't actually change very much about what you need to do today to move forward on any of these. So we're going to close there. Gilbert, any closing thoughts, words of wisdom for our audience?
Please feel free to reach out to us with any questions. We're here to help.
Thank you. And Nadia?
Yeah, I just always encourage people to start sooner rather than later so they can get all their ducks in a row.
Wonderful, thank you. And Anita? Hashtag should be fine.
Should be fine. We're here to help. Like Gilbert said, feel free to reach out to us. And thank you all for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Anita, Nadia, and Gilbert. It was so fun doing this with you. I hope our audience agrees. Please connect with us. We have a wonderful newsletter that we all handwrite every month with all the latest updates. So you can subscribe to that as well. We'll have all the information for you in our follow-up. We would love to connect with you. We would love to support you and help you make all of these dreams a reality. So please reach out. We are here to support. And with that, we will wrap up our H1B 2021 January webinar. We have a lot more webinars on the way. And I wish you all a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you, everybody.